Sergio, and I'll be explaining to you about jazz music, a type of music that dominated from the years 1910 to 1950, with characters such as Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and Dizzy Gillespie. Jazz music dominated from 1910 to 1950. Instead of traditional sets of notes and traditional patterns, jazz music took it to a whole new level, playing on offbeats and playing repetitive sounds over and over while adding improvisations. The first 5 notes of What a Wonderful World would be played in true jazz spirit. This is a little bit about jazz. This is Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was born in New Orleans, Louisiana on August 4th, 1901. Louis Armstrong was one of the most influential artists in the history of music. He began playing the cornet at the age of 13 and played up until July 6, 1971, when he passed away in New York City. Armstrong perfected the improvised jazz solo as we know it today. Before Armstrong, people played Dixieland, which was a style of jazz where everybody soloed at the same time. Pops, or Satchmo as he was affectionately known, popularized the style of playing during breaks and so having individual solos. Louis was loved and admired throughout the world. He became the face of jazz and of music in the 20th century. This is Duke Ellington, born Edward Kennedy Ellington. He was born April 29, 1899 in Washington, D.C. He began studying the piano at the age of 7. He started playing jazz as a teenager and moved to NYC to become a band leader. As a pianist, composer, and band leader, Ellington was one of the creators of the Big Bang sound, which fueled the swing era. He continued leading and composing for jazz orchestra until his death in 1974. Composer and arranger Billy Strayhorn noted that Ellington plays the piano, but his real instrument is his band. Each member of his band is to him a distinctive tone color instead of emotions, which he mixes with others equally distinctive to produce a third thing, which I like to call the Ellington effect. A third thing, man.
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Solid.
This is Chief Keef. He is a pioneer of modern rap music. His single, I Hate Being Sober,
Nope.
Oh,
Stop it.
No.
You disgust me.
Oh. Dizzy Gillespie, John Burke's Dizzy Gillespie, was born October 21st, 1917 in Cheraw, South Carolina. He got his first music lesson from his father and took off from there. He moved to New York City in 1937 and met musicians such as Thelonious Monk and Charlie Parker. Together they experimented with jazz and came up with a bebop sound. Dizzy also introduced Latin American rhythms to jazz by collaborating with artists such as Machito and Chano Pozo. He died in Englewood, New Jersey on January 6, 1993.
Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, dude, look at all this pot. So much pot, dude. Hey, Dan, all this art developed from something else. Did jazz develop from something or into anything else?
Sergio, great question. According to Google, the origins of jazz started with a mesh of the Delta blues of the turn of the century in places like New Orleans, Chicago, Kansas City, and St. Louis, and the popular classical music of the European styles in the 18th centuries. This development created a improvisational type music. Most early jazz was played in small marching bands or solo, really morphing into solo improvisational jazz around 1925. This gave way for the artist to be more creative and stray away from the set type of music. As Sergio displayed earlier in this video, much of it was improvisational and created on the spot. During the years from between the First and Second World War, 1918 to 1940, places such as Paris embraced jazz as their own. In fact, many American-born jazz musicians such as Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and all the other famous ones avoided persecution here from various groups who were not accustomed to the type of jazz that they were playing and brought it overseas. Overseas, they really appreciated it, and although America really was trying, jazz was the first thing that America was not divided on based on race, Europe was even more so accepting, and it created a great environment for these performers to show off their talents regardless of their race. Sadly, during the 1950s, jazz really started to face off against other forms of entertainment. The rises of rock and roll, disco, and other forms of music in the 60s, 70s, and 80s really sent jazz into an almost fatal death sentence. But fortunately, during the 1990s, it received a revival from the bop music of the 90s and really manifested jazz into something that was able to be transfigured and synthesized into multiple different types of music, making jazz prevalent and alive today.
Hey, Pop, keep it down. Hey, why don't I put you down, huh? Why don't I put you down?
Sergio, I got a question, man. Why did Papa Sather give us this question about jazz music if we're trying to learn about Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison?
Damn,
Really makes no sense.
I got you. Don't worry.
Good, beautiful.
There you go.
Enlighten me.
Black and Blue was basically the commentary on the conflict that blacks faced in the white society. And Ellison really used Black and Blue as like the purpose and like to set the tone of the novel. He used it as like a blueprint for it, I guess you could say, and to show the oppression that blacks were facing in white society. And so his invisibility arose from the fact that people refused to see him as, you know, an individual man, but rather as like an object. And so in the structure, Ellison uses jazz as kind of like, he writes it in the same flow and structure. Just as in jazz, there's like nodes and like pauses where time seems to stand still, so does in the book. Like, for example, in the prologue, there's Ellison like shows the dream of him going back, and there's the woman crying about her daughter, and there's also the flashback to Mr. Norton when he had to drive him to see the family. And so like there's points like that, and there's also like he uses progression, and then he also like uses the notes to kind of reflect and make like symbolic gestures, I guess you could say, and then he continues it on just like jazz, as it does with its improvisational points.
Extra credit.
Voice crack.
Chill.
Leave me alone.